Good morning.
Hey, good
Good
morning.
morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Getting Unstuck. And today is Thriving Thursday. At least it is when we're recording this. I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be a Thriving Friday or Saturday for you when you're watching or listening to this episode. We're yet again here having another coffee chat. And today we're going to be talking about when you've been sidelined. So what happens when you are being sidelined at work? When you're the one that is left out, when you're disregarded, when you're passed over, and even given weak excuses, like when you're looking to understand why. So we're going to be talking about that. If you are new here at our show, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, on our Instagram and over on LinkedIn. And as well, if you're wondering more about our work, you can find us over at wholehumancoaching.com. Okay, so let's talk now about you. Let's talk about what happens when you've been sidelined.
Well, it's funny because as we talked about this yesterday, we realized that I think it's universal that
Yeah.
every single one of us can call upon that moment in the playground where we weren't picked on a team, or we didn't get to go with the cool kids, or we were told we couldn't be there. And we all have that echo that resonates in each of us. So when it happens in the workplace, it feels really hurtful. Right?
It brings back all of those emotions of
Yeah.
sort of loneliness and exclusion and pain. And certainly I remember turning all of those on myself, right? It's like, oh, I'm wrong, so what's wrong with me, right? So painful.
Yeah. And I think it can bring up a sense of, I've often heard people say that like whatever you focus on expands. And so when you feel you're being sidelined, we're going to look for it over and over again, and we can become very problem focused on it, right? And not to say that all the onus is on us to change the entire systems that we're in, but when we feel those things, and when it echoes like what you were referring to, then there's some very distinct ways for us to identify that, I think, in ourselves, to first of all be able to give ourselves space to acknowledge that, yes, this is happening. So I'm curious if we could talk about that for a minute, about what are some of those symptoms of being actually sidelined.
I think one of the pieces that stands out for me is that sense of loneliness. So there is, you walk into a room and there's nobody to catch eyes with. There's nobody to sit with. You're walking through the coffee room and there's nobody turns to ask you about what's going on. So there is this sense of isolation that occurs when you realize you're really not in with the in folks. And the reality is it happens in the workplace. There are cliques. People do gather together in their groups, and there is, whether we're happy about it or not, hierarchy that occurs. So there's a feeling about it, but there's a reality to it as well.
It's such a contradiction of humankind and human community, that we all thrive and we need, and what that seems to have been forgotten, right? That human connection, that everybody, it's essential to life, right?
And when we were talking about gangs on Tuesday, that's what creates gangs, is that we all have this drive to belong. We want to belong somewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have the right to, like just the, maybe that's too strong of a word, but it's like, it's almost like maybe right. Yeah. Right. Is not the right word, but it's, we have this deep-seated need that should be cherished,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
it's
it's
intrinsically
worth.
neat.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that there are also some questions that that come up, that I've had for myself when I've been sidelined, that I hear some of the clients that I've coached or that we have worked with, when they know that they're questioning whether they've been sidelined. But it doesn't first start out as, often it doesn't start out as, am I being sidelined? I think it starts out more as an internal question, because our human nature looks inside. We're meaning making machines, right? So we're asking,
Mhm.
what's wrong with me?
It is.
What did
That's the
I do to
big
deserve
question.
it? Mhm.
Mhm. And that's the impactful one.
Yeah.
Because if we look at a situation and we walk away thinking, "What's wrong with me?"
Mhm.
Then it becomes this internal spiral of, "Oh, it's got to be me. Look at those people all belong, and it's working for them, so it's gotta be something wrong with me." And
Mhm.
that becomes a self-perpetuating myth about who we are.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would argue that that's the area to dig into,
Mhm.
to scratch, start scratching in the dirt on when you are feeling that, right? Because um, I think we all agree that in that in that discomfort is a
Mm.
message or a story that perhaps you are not in the right place or the right place, time, space,
Yeah.
time,
Yes.
and it's I think it's a light, it's a beacon of
Mhm.
looking towards you, who you really are, and what
Mm.
is your true potential, and what are the possibilities if you did find your tribe,
Oh.
um, and did have the support, and people weren't turning their backs on you. So as you recognize it, think about that pivot that you might be able to make towards shining the light on your uniqueness and your
Oh.
power and what's there, and what are the possibilities.
Colin, I really wanna highlight that because I
Mm,
think what you're pointing to is that sensation that we feel. It's like, "Oh, it must be what's wrong with me," or "I don't
Mhm.
belong there," can be just an amazing opening to finding possibility for who you really are.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
And to trust your gut too, because
Mhm.
so often I think in a workplace we can go on for a long time with like something small in our gut, and you're like, something's quite not right, and I don't quite know, and
Mm.
uh, we've spoken about this in the past. We tend to normalize these sort of elevated levels of stress or elevated levels of acceptance of
Mhm.
something as okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Ooh.
if you listen deeply without that judgment that we were just speaking about, you can find a different path, a way
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think it's really
that
important that you said that, Colin, that we can normalize things, because when our nervous systems, and I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm going to put that out there right now, but I know that our nervous systems, when we are on um, when we become on high alert for whatever reason, if we don't feel safe in a space, whether that is whatever the reason, so it could
Mhm.
be, it's innumerable,
Yep.
and it's but the whole point is if we do not feel safe in a space, then we become on high alert. But that actually does become normalized for us, so we can continue to tolerate situations,
Mm.
and
Yes.
and I think we can get to the point where we tolerate the sidelining, we can tolerate the injustice or the
Mhm.
inequitable situations that we find ourselves in, and we start to rationalize. So we tolerate, and then we start to rationalize,
Yes,
and we inevitably start to sometimes gaslight ourselves on thinking that we are the problem, right?
we do.
So
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Carol.
Well, I was just gonna say our current economy
Yeah.
often has us feel we need to justify.
Yeah.
I have to be here. I've gotta keep this job. I need to move ahead.
Yeah.
I want that promotion. All of those pieces continue to keep us in that
Yeah.
space. But I think what I'm hearing is this opportunity that happens when we get that niggling like, "Yeah, this just doesn't feel right," is to consider about where we do belong and who we
Yes.
can be.
Yeah.
And Toko Turner wrote this wonderful book called Belonging,
Mhm.
and one of the pieces that she highlights in it is about being a black sheep.
Mhm.
And what she is saying is that the black sheep are actually they're the artists, they're the inventors, they're the creators in our society.
Mm.
And if they weren't alone, they couldn't do that. she's written something called the Black Sheep Gospel, and I just want to share one piece of it, because she says
Great.
that if we become the champion of our right to be here,
Mhm.
we have that opportunity, and that remembering that our offering needs no explanation. It is
Ooh,
our own explanation that allows us to be here. So we can begin to trust who we are in any situation, and to begin to kind of celebrate our uniqueness.
right. Okay, so that's interesting. I really like that line. I hadn't heard that line before, but I just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. We begin to become the champion of our right to be here. Right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
I am curious how that looks for people, and in things that we could be thinking about in our if someone is listening right now and they're thinking, okay, how can I begin to champion my right to be here?
Mm.
Because inevitably there's also the nothing exists in an isolated incident, right? There's
Sure.
other things that are a result of that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about what it looks like for people to champion the right to be there, or whether you've had experience doing that.
I think for me, it all begins with that internal dialogue. It
Mhm.
becomes with that internal conversation, and it is a bit of a pivot. So
Yeah,
it comes from, I don't belong here, to I have a right to be here. Those are two
right.
different ways of
Very.
looking at the same situation. And then it becomes an internal inventory. Instead of what's wrong with me, where do I shine? What is
Yeah,
my contribution? And
good.
how can I highlight that in this particular environment? And I think that there is a parallel process to that, which you're pointing to, Colin, which is, if this is not the right environment, where
Mhm.
can I be a champion for myself in the right environment? So there is a duality to it.
There
And it
is.
may not be necessarily that you have to quit your job and throw the baby out with the bathwater and start all over, but it's kind of connected to what we've talked about in the past of creating your own personal toolkit, right? Your Whether it's
Mhm.
leadership or personal toolkit, where you have a very clear idea of who you are, and you've
Mm,
cleaned up some of those self-limiting beliefs and stories that you just mentioned. You can then align better in even within the business that you're in and say, hey, you know what, I might be better over on that team because that's more aligned to my uniqueness and the talents and the power and the passion and everything that I bring to the table.
mhm,
So if you can begin to do those inventories and also begin to inventorize the beliefs and the stories you're telling yourself, right? Because
mhm.
then you can say, oh, is this serving me? Is it real?
Yeah.
Where does it come from? What's the origin story? So um, we're certainly not advocating for, changing everything in your life and,
Yeah.
all that, but you can begin to identify and diagnose the stories and
Mhm.
articulate them and rewrite new ones
Yeah.
that work for you.
Yeah. So let's pull that out a little bit more. Let's kind of play with
Mhm.
that for a minute. Okay.
Sure.
So when we talk about Colin, when you talk about like almost questioning or asking ourselves the story and the narrative,
Yeah.
um, what would that look like if I was someone that was listening to this, or I've experienced, and things that we're talking about is resonating with me at this moment, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what does that mean? Help me
Mm.
understand how that could look. What are some of your thoughts around that?
Well, I mean, for me, it's about really inventorizing all of the beliefs that you've got towards, let's say, this particular situation.
Mhm.
Because a lot of time, if we are sidelined, you can go into that spiral that Carol was speaking about before, and it can be very hard to see any glimmer of light, right? And you
Yeah.
begin
Mhm.
to impact on top of yourself a lot of negativity and self-limiting belief stories. But if you can pause, and it might not be in the workplace, it might be on a weekend or wherever, and begin to journal what you are telling yourself.
Okay.
Right?
Mm.
Because I think so often, even when we're speaking with people about, let's say, financial insecurity or a career plan,
Mhm.
someone will say, I want to be financially secure.
Mhm.
but they don't identify precisely what that means. So
Right.
this
Right.
work to do
Yeah.
if you are feeling sidelined is to stop and take some time for yourself and identify precisely what is going on. I think and it's interesting, you might even start to laugh at yourself at some point
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, I'm believing this. I'm telling myself this
Yes.
story."
Yeah.
And there's, they can be emotionally charged, they can be
Yeah.
emotionally triggering, they can be
Mhm.
trauma related. I mean,
Mhm.
but the identification and the acknowledgement that they're there and they exist, once you've got those in front of you, you can begin to break them down and see what's serving you and what's not serving you.
Mhm.
What's
Oh.
not serving you, we put it aside. What's serving you in terms of your beliefs and your stories and your
Mhm.
narratives, you can
Mhm.
then begin to say, hey, you know what? I am a bit of an artist. Now, I may be an accountant
Yeah.
or a mathematician or something like
Yeah.
that, but you can still add creativity to any industry, of course,
Mm.
and begin to catalog the
Yeah.
the how those stories that are serving you, like what is great about you, what
Right.
is unique about you, because your uniqueness may not fit into this particular team today in this moment, and that's why
Yeah.
perhaps you're being sidelined. But that's not a death sentence, it's not a life sentence. it's
Right.
a it's a moment in time of you being sidelined, and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
so
Oh, very cool. And Colin, I think the important piece to point out is
mm,
that in any moment we can listen. We can listen to the voice that we're hearing in our heads. And once we begin to identify it,
Mhm.
the word you used earlier, Crystal, was agency.
Yeah.
We begin to get some ability to be able to hear the distinction. Oh, that's me telling myself that I am not good
Yeah.
enough here.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's when I call myself an idiot.
Mhm.
Listen to our inner dialogue.
yeah.
It's funny with my grandson he's now a teenager, but when he was little, he would used to say, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or "That was really dumb." And I remember saying to him, "What would be kinder to say to yourself?"
Mhm.
Because we all do those
Mhm.
things like, "Oh, crap,
Yeah.
I did
Sure.
that again." So we
Yeah.
began calling each other a silly goose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, "Oh, you silly goose, look, you missed that." And there's something funny and kind about being called a silly goose. It's not
Yeah.
insulting or mean. And so
Yeah.
it became a bit of a dialogue for my grandson when he did something that felt like it didn't fit. As it turned out, he actually has ADHD.
Mhm.
And once that all was diagnosed, there was more understanding.
Yeah.
But initially, his dialogue to himself was very harsh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
I think also that because change is an inside job.
Oh, yeah.
So uh, by allowing ourselves and um, honoring ourselves and recognizing our worth in giving worth to our story and worth to recognizing our experience and honoring that experience also helps us get a measure of clarity that we may not have had before. So when we feel
Mhm.
completely when we feel like we are powerless in a situation, the 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 point of power gaining back or reclaiming that power or that agency starts with recognizing what you said, Colin, recognizing the stories. And is there something that I can what is the story that I'm perpetuating? And as we start to change those
Mhm.
stories, then we start to realize things. And maybe it is that there is injustice and inequitability in our workplace,
Yes.
and there is absolutely nothing wrong with calling that out. Let's just be honest.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with calling that out. In
yep.
fact, that should be called out. But also by allowing ourselves to change inside, then we get the clarity on how to do it, and we can continue to honor ourselves through the
Mhm.
process. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I wanna leave us with a quote, and kudos here to Toko Turner again. She says, "But paradoxically, it's only when she honors that apartness
Mhm.
that she finally fits in."
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yes.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Hallelujah.
Mhm.
You are a shining star.
Yeah,
So just remember that.
Mhm.
It's brilliant.
Honoring that.
Well, I think we have to wrap up, don't we? We're
Mhm.
at the 20-minute coffee break limit. So please like and subscribe and share here on YouTube, and follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. And we also have a website. I think it's ticking along the bottom, wholehumancoaching.com. Join us. We are on a mission to help bring humanity back to the workplace. So
Mm,
come along.
love
God
to hear
knows we
from
need
you.
it.
Thank you. And until we see you the
Thanks,
next
guys.
time, we wish you all the best in life and work. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining.